Today, US President Joe Biden will meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. This will be at the APEC summit in San Francisco. The meet comes at the backdrop of the Israel-Hamas war that has been raging in West Asia for more than a month. But what's on the agenda for the summit? Let's break it down. The US is hosting the annual Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit of World Leaders for the first time since 2011. Leaders from the 21-member Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Group will gather in San Francisco to talk about how to better spur trade and economic growth across the Pacific. Let me further explain it to you what the forum is about. APEC is a regional economic forum that was established in 1989. It is a forum to promote trade, investment and economic development among nations around the Pacific Ocean. The group started with 12 members in 1989 but has since grown to 21, including China, Russia, Japan, the United States and Australia. Those member nations pack a lot of punch, accounting for nearly 40% of the global population and almost half the world's trade. The annual Leaders Conference brings together heads of nations and other top economic and diplomatic leaders. But the Russian President Vladimir Putin, facing an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court, will not be going to San Francisco. And the US has made it clear that he is not welcome. Moscow will instead be represented by Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk, still the highest-level Russian visitor to the United States since the war. Moreover, APEC members include not only Indonesia but neighboring Malaysia, where Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has faced calls from opposition to boycott the summit over US support for Israel. APEC, which speaks of member economies instead of countries, unusually includes both China and Taiwan. But Taiwan is not represented by a politician but a business person, Morris Chang, a historic figure in Taiwan's semiconductor industry. Meanwhile, Hong Kong will be represented by Financial Secretary Paul Chan. Chief Executive John Lee, who is under US sanctions for his role in a political crackdown in Hong Kong, opted out of the summit, citing scheduling issues. As of now, the Chinese President Xi has arrived in San Francisco. And the host country president, US President Biden, has arrived in San Francisco to host the 30th APEC Economic Leaders meeting. And now let me tell you why San Francisco was selected as a location for the summit. It was for its historic ties to Asia and its central role in global technology. But APEC is unlikely to offer respite from the issue that has dominated the American president's attention for a month, the Israel-Hamas war. But how effective is APEC? The forum has limited scope after all. It is centered only on trade and economy. There is no military component, and it wasn't forged by a world-altering event like a war. It technically has member economies rather than nations. That allows room for participation by both China-ruled Hong Kong and self-ruled Taiwan. APEC's strength lies in its ability to get countries to work together to big initiatives and to ease business relations without binding agreements. Economists point to how APEC contributed to a reduction of tariffs and other barriers to trade. But the trade landscape is different now than when APEC began in a period of increased mobilization. The US strategy has been focused on economic competition with China rather than cooperation. Even as US leaders continue to stress the importance of cooperation, Biden is seeking partnerships with other nations in the region to develop alternatives to Chinese manufacturing imports, such as electronic equipment, machinery, furniture, textiles, and other goods. The American president is also trying to highlight progress on the new Indo-Pacific trade deal started last year after former US President Donald Trump withdrew from the more popular Trans-Pacific Partnership. The conference also has had its challenges and moments of drama in recent years. Chile, for one, withdrew as the APEC host in 2019 due to mass protests. while next year the group met virtually in 2020 and 2021 because of the pandemic. Leaders did gather in Bangkok last year, but US President Biden skipped the summit because his granddaughter was getting married and he sent Vice President Kamala Harris in his place. That decision was regarded as a snub by some APEC leaders. Then delegates from the United States and 4 other nations walked out to protest Russia's invasion of Ukraine as a Russian representative to the conference began to speak. This year may give rise to friction over the Israel-Hamas war in West Asia. The variety of nations involved in the summit have strong views on both sides of the conflict. Meanwhile, I earlier spoke to our Voice of America correspondent Jessica Stone about the latest details about the APEC summit that is being hosted by San Francisco. Take a look.
Yeah, it's about an hour's drive from San Francisco, so it's not inside the city. It's not at or near the venue where all of the other leaders are going to be engaged in meetings. This is a mansion, a historic estate on the outskirts of San Francisco by the name of the Filoli Estate. And what's really striking about the choice of this location is that it is a place of renewal. It is a place of farming and orchards and long walks and beautiful pastoral landscapes. Among them, a bridge that literally crosses the tectonic plates that join the Pacific to North America. That is called the San Andreas Fault, and it is known for being part of the reason that we have earthquakes in California. And so there is some symbolism in these two leaders having an opportunity to walk across a bridge that literally bridges the divide between the Pacific and North America. And in so many ways, I think there's a hope on both sides that the relationship between these two large economies, the largest in the world, will improve. That said, hopes are not high for major outcomes from the U.S. perspective. They are looking for 2 major outcomes, which are really not on the same scale of previous expectations of these types of meetings. And that is they would like to see a restoration of military-to-military communication, which came up as particularly problematic during the Chinese spy balloon incident earlier this year, in which Washington said it could not raise Beijing on the phone, could not get a hold of any officials, and wants a restoration of those communications in order to deconflict or avoid any military issues. And the other major outcome that the U.S. is coming into this meeting asking for is Beijing to use its influence with Tehran to limit the amount of support that Iran gives to Hezbollah, which is the Iran-backed militia group in Lebanon. The U.S. does not want to see them get involved in the Israel-Hamas conflict, and also that China could potentially use its influence with Iran with respect to Hamas itself, which gets much of its funding from Iran. So those are the outcomes that the U.S. comes to the table with at this very striking site. I have to just add, I was at Sunnylands in California. It's the same type of setup at the beginning of the relationship when President Obama was meeting with Xi Jinping in the early days, well before all of the trade friction. And now we see these two leaders having an opportunity to meet at a very symbolic site. But will they come away with any symbolic outcomes? That's the question.
WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.